Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Marvel Television and Disney+. From the twisted minds behind WandaVision comes an all-new Marvel original series, Agatha All Along. This Halloween season, revenge is a witch. You don't want to miss Agatha Harkness's return to darkness as she assembles a coven to regain her power and wreak vengeance. Starring Kathryn Hahn and Aubrey Plaza, Marvel Television's Agatha All Along, now streaming only on Disney+.
You're ready for a comeback. And with Purdue Global, you can do more than take classes. You can take charge of your story, of your career, of your life. Earn a degree you can be proud of and get an education employers respect. It's time, your time, not just to go back to school, but to come back and move forward with Purdue Global, Purdue's online university for working adults. Start your comeback at purdueglobal.edu.
You know that feeling when you walk into your home, take a deep breath, and feel new? Well, that's what it's like to use Clorox Scentiva. Because Clorox Scentiva smells like coconut, cleans like Clorox, and feels like energy. It'll elevate any cleaning routine to not just clean, but also make every room smell like a tropical coconut getaway. Discover how Clorox Scentiva's powerful clean and refreshing scents can transform your space. Get yours in coconut or other fabulous scents at a nearby retail store.
In California, during the summer of 1975, within the span of 17 days and less than 90 miles, 2 women did something no other woman had done before: tried to assassinate the President of the United States. One was the protege of Charles Manson.
26-year-old Lynette Fromm, nicknamed Squeaky.
The other, a middle-aged housewife working undercover for the FBI.
Identified by police as Sarah Jean Moore.
The story of one strange and violent summer, this season on the new podcast, Rip Current.
Hear episodes of Rip Current early and completely ad-free and receive exclusive bonus content by subscribing to iHeart True Crime Plus, only on Apple Podcasts.
Hey listeners, it's Jenny. This month we're heading back to school and we're taking you along with us. For all of September, we're bringing back some of our favorite Womanica episodes you might have missed. You'll hear me and some talented guest hosts share both iconic and underappreciated stories. And there's a twist. Each week is dedicated to a different school subject. This week, women you should be learning about in science class. It was hard to narrow this week down. There are so many different fields of science, but I know you're going to love this group of intrepid discoverers and barrier breakers. So, here's one of our favorite Womanicans. Hello. From Wonder Media Network, I'm Jenny Kaplan, and this is Womanica. This month, we're highlighting women who made a major impact in health and wellness. Today, we're focusing on a woman who unknowingly shaped modern medicine. For the past 70 years, scientists have used cells taken from her body without her knowledge or permission to develop vaccines, conduct research, and more. Let's talk about Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta was born on August 1, 1920, in Roanoke, Virginia. When she was 4 years old, her mother passed away. Afterwards, Henrietta moved to Clover, Virginia, where she was raised by her grandfather. There, she worked on a tobacco farm with other members of her family. In 1941, Henrietta married David Lacks, and the couple moved to Maryland. Henrietta had 5 children and was a pillar of support to her extended family as well. Her door was always open. In 1950, Henrietta told her cousins that she felt like there was a knot inside of her. She started experiencing abnormal vaginal bleeding, and after she gave birth to her 5th child, doctors noticed a lump in her cervix that wasn't going away. Several months after experiencing those initial symptoms, Henrietta went to Johns Hopkins Hospital. It was the only hospital in the area that treated Black patients, but they were placed in segregated wards. After Henrietta received a biopsy, doctors determined that she had cervical cancer. To treat the cancer, her doctors put tubes of radium, a radioactive metal, into little pouches. Then they sewed those pouches into the inside of her cervix. The goal was for the radium to kill the cancer cells growing inside Henrietta's body. During the surgical procedure, Henrietta's surgeon took 2 tissue samples from her body, one from her normal cervical tissue and 1 from her tumor. These samples were then sent to the head of tissue culture research at Johns Hopkins, Dr. George Otto Guy. Dr. Guy had been collecting cells from all Hopkins patients with cervical cancer for years. All the cells he had collected died within a few days. Dr. Guy was trying to create a line of immortal cells, cells that could reproduce indefinitely. When Dr. Guy received Henrietta's cells, he made a remarkable discovery. Unlike other cells he had encountered, Henrietta's continuously multiplied on their own. They doubled every 20 to 24 hours. Guy named the cell culture HeLa, taking the first 2 letters from Henrietta's first and last name. He began using the cells for cancer research. Henrietta had no knowledge that her tissue cells were being used in this way. At the time, it was common for surgeons to collect cell samples from patients without their knowledge or consent. And while Henrietta's cells were multiplying, Henrietta herself was declining in health. By September of 1951, her internal organs were covered in cancerous tumors. She died on October 4th, 1951, at 31 years old. After Henrietta's death, Dr. Guy wanted to collect more samples from her body. But legally, he couldn't perform an autopsy on Henrietta without permission from her family. So physicians convinced her husband that further tests could potentially help their children. Researchers continued using HeLa cells for decades. They're used to study the human genome, for disease research, and they helped develop the COVID-19 vaccine. Henrietta's cells even went to space to test the effects of zero gravity on the human cells. Scientists buy vials of Henrietta's cells for hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars. But Henrietta's family was never compensated for the use of her cells. Her family didn't even know her cells were being used in this way until the 1970s. And they only found out because scientists tracked down Henrietta's children to obtain blood samples to be used in additional studies. Today, more people are learning about Henrietta's story. In 2010, author Rebecca Skloot published a New York Times best-selling book called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It was later adapted into an HBO film starring Oprah Winfrey. And this past year, in 2021, Henrietta Lacks' family brought lawsuits against biomedical corporations that have profited off of HeLa cells. The family's demanding their share of the profits. Today, HeLa cells are still alive and multiplying, helping researchers create new breakthroughs in medicine. Thanks for listening to this Best Of episode of Womanica. For more information, find us on Facebook and Instagram at Womanica Podcast. Special thanks to Liz Kaplan, my favorite sister and co-creator. As always, we'll be taking a break for the weekend. Tune in on Monday for another of our favorite episodes honoring the back-to-school season. Talk to you then.
In California, during the summer of 1975, within the span of 17 days and less than 90 miles, 2 women did something no other woman had done before: tried to assassinate the President of the United States. One was the protege of Charles Manson.
26-year-old Lynette Fromm, nicknamed Squeaky.
The other, a middle-aged housewife working undercover for the FBI.
Identified by police as Sarah Jean Moore.
The story of one strange and violent summer, this season on the new podcast, Rip Current.
Hear episodes of Rip Current early and completely ad-free and receive exclusive bonus content by subscribing to iHeart True Crime Plus, only on Apple Podcasts.
How do you feel about biscuits? Hi, I'm Akilah Hughes, and I'm so excited about my new podcast, Rebel Spirit, where I head back to my hometown in Kentucky and try to convince my high school to change their racist mascot, the Rebels, into something everyone in the South loves, the biscuits.
I was a lady rebel. Like, what does that even mean?
It's right here in black and white in print, so they lie.
Bigger than a flag or mascot.
Listen to Rebel Spirit on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
There's so much beauty in Mexican culture, like mariachis, delicious cuisine, and even lucha libre. Join us for the new podcast, Lucha Libre Behind the Mask, a 12-episode podcast in both English and Spanish about the history and cultural richness of lucha libre. And I'm your host, Santos Escobar, Emperor of Lucha Libre and a WWE superstar. Listen to Lucha Libre Behind the Mask on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you stream podcasts.
Hi, I'm David Eagleman from the podcast Inner Cosmos, which recently hit the #1 science podcast in America. I'm a neuroscientist at Stanford, and I've spent my career exploring the 3-pound universe in our heads. Join me weekly to explore the relationship between your brain and your life, because the more we know about what's running under the hood, the better we can steer our lives. Listen to Inner Cosmos with David Eagleman on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.